Professor, how are you today?
Thank you. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you just
Great.
fine.
Great. Perfect.
Okay, so just so you guys know, the conversation is recorded. Feel free to clip it, do whatever you want with it. Okay, so we will get started. For our listeners, Professor, can you give some explanation of your definition of liberal fascism and some examples in current context?
So we need to get deeper in the definition of what totalitarian ideology is. So first of all, we should agree that communist ideology and the fascist ideology were totalitarian. That is prescriptive and trying to impose its principles, its ideas, its concepts in the mind of the whole society. That means that totalitarian ideology is considered to be prescriptive. So it prescribes what to do, how to feel, what to think, where to go, how to evaluate different things. So that is made by the state, by the ruling class or ruling elite in the totalitarian way. So it reaches all members of society. And during 20th century, the common wisdom, the common wisdom was conventional wisdom was that liberalism is alternative to that. So liberalism isn't ideology, isn't totalitarian ideology. Because it doesn't prescribe to people what to think, how to behave. That is ideology or system or philosophy of the freedom. Of that, nothing could be prescribed, and nothing could be prescribed in the totalitarian way, using the weapons, the tools of social engineering, of mass hypnosis, propaganda, and so on. But what we have today, there are no more communism or fascism. There are no more classical totalitarian regimes we knew. But at the same time, there is only one ideology that rests. That is liberalism. But when there are no alternative to liberalism, because in a modern situation, in Western society, or in the societies who imitate, who follow the West, there is only one option: to be liberal. And so liberalism, there are no alternative. If you are not liberal, so you are done. If you claim or declare yourself illiberal, in the eyes of liberals, you are fascist or communist, so you transgress the rules and the norms and the laws, so you are criminal, you should be punished, cancelled, deplatformed, or erased at all. So, and what is it? So we have only one ideology on global scale, and the ruling elite of the global scale now wants or insists to prescribe how all the societies, all the citizens, all the people, all the human beings in the world should behave themselves, should think, should act. The obligatory thing is a free market. Obligatory and radically imposed is a liberal democracy in party democracy. At the same time, there are some set of tolerance, wokist values, LGBT, transgender, the progressivism that everybody is obliged to accept. So that is more or less what I mean when I use the word liberal fascism. It is not just insult. It is not just dirty word to blame the opponents. That is scientific reality of some transformation of liberal ideology, that from the criticism of any prescription, any imposition to the society by ruling elite, was transformed now in new liberal version with fully ideological totalitarian nature. So that we can say that following, for example, Hannah Arendt. Hannah Arendt has affirmed that is very important in many people forget it, that Hannah Arendt has defined the totalitarianism as purely modern European Western phenomenon. So we could not call Middle Age, hierarchical society, Roman Empire, traditional societies. We could not call properly totalitarian. Totalitarianism is the new political ideology proper to the Western modern political regimes. But normally the people until recently believed that totalitarian are communism and fascism, and now we see that all modern political ideologies, including liberalism, were and are totalitarian. So we can choose one totalitarian ideology among other totalitarian ideologies if we still stay in the limit of European Western political modernity. So we could, they say, for example, that communism was a kind of left fascism. Maybe that was right. We can say that maybe the fascism was far right communism or Bolshevism. Maybe that is right. So in that sense, modern day liberalism, neoliberalism, with the rule of minorities over majority, the other definition of liberal totalitarian ideology, we could call it either liberal communism, because it is communism with totalitarian aspect, or far left liberalism, or we could call it liberal fascism, because all three ideologies are totalitarian. We knew that about communism and fascism, but what is new now, that is today, liberalism is quite totalitarian, and if you don't agree with that, so you either don't understand the deep nature of political situation on the world scale, and what is hegemony, political, intellectual, philosophical hegemony of liberal elite. Either you just on that side. So liberal fascism or liberal communism, that is the same. We use these words in order to emphasize the newly discovered nature of liberalism, that is prescription, that is totalitarian, that is imposition, radical imposition of one thought, one model of thinking that wasn't proper to classical liberalism. We could say that our new liberalism is some new phenomenon, because classical liberalism wasn't prescriptive. But nevertheless, how it has happened that non-prescriptive ideology was transformed into prescriptive ideology. But we could think or discuss about that. But the totalitarian character of modern day liberalism is absolutely clear.
Thank you, Professor. So, in the face of some popular right-wing nationalism in Europe, especially Hungary, Slovakia, and even Romania and Poland, how likely is it that the EU would break apart? And if the cracks of divide in the EU grow, how likely is it to affect NATO and Western hegemony?
So I think that modern day European Union is based precisely on this liberal totalitarianism, liberal fascism, and liberal European elite, they behave themselves exactly in that way. So we have kind of rebellions in the Europe, a kind of resistance, a kind of revolt on different scales in Europe against this liberal hegemony, against this totalitarianism, and this rebellion has different aspects. For example, you have mentioned Hungary and Slovakia. Here we have two countries, two political regimes openly opposing the main liberal globalist agenda. I don't think they are too far to far right or right populist regimes. I think that they maybe they liberal regimes, but they're all liberals. So I have spoken, I have many times mentioned this example. I have once spoken with Francis Fukuyama about the nature of modern democracy. And classical democracy was the rule of majority, and Fukuyama has emphasized that new democracy is the rule of minorities directed against majority. Because the majority is always wrong, because majority could elect and vote for Hitler and transform in populism. So we need to fight against majority. And that's in the case of Fukuyama. Minorities, liberal elites, representative of different kind of sexual perverts, immigrants without clear identity. So people without the center. Eccentric people. Minority is eccentric, and this eccentric, in any senses, minority pretend in the European Union to impose its rule. And classical democracy or old way liberalism revolt against that. So it is not about far right or left, far left criticism of the liberalism. It is just a kind of instinctual, maybe liberal democratic of old-fashioned liberal democracy reaction against the rule of this this extravagant, eccentric minorities fighting against the people, against society, trying to impose a kind of mixture of confusion, illegal immigration, to destroy any kind of identity. So this system of liberal fascism is openly destroying the societies, the people. They want to transform the people, first of all, in a perverse, transgender, after that, transhuman. So their agenda is now clear, and Slovakia and Hungary, as a society, they have managed to represent their refuse of this agenda by political means. In other countries, the dictatorship of the ruling eccentric minorities is so hard and so strong, for example, in French, in other countries, that they could not, in Germany, they could not find a way to the people, the alternative people, the normal people. The majority could not define a way how to express their refuse. So they are the ruling minorities. They try to separate their protests, to make the channels or narrow channels of the protest in putting some people in far right position, far left position, ecologist position, and everybody is fighting against each other. So they divide and they rule. And in Slovakia and Hungary, the people has succeeded. The real people, the real society, the real majority has succeeded somehow to overcome this trap. The same thing has happened in Italy with Fratelli d'Italia, Lega del Nord, that were initially really far right populist movement, but becoming the part of the ruling system, they were transformed in the minorities. So they behave now, Meloni and Salvini, who were very brave and very populist and trying to represent the real will of the majority. They were a kind of transformed in the instrument, in the tools of this eccentric elite.
Professor, I just muted your mic because it's causing an echo. So.
Okay.
1 second. There we go. Okay. So Russia is a great example of a country that not only tolerates. Professor, can you mute your mic?
Sorry. Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Okay. Sorry. It was like making me dyslexic. Okay. Professor, Russia is a great example of a country that's not only tolerates, but embraces and celebrates her religious and ethnic minorities. How does Russia balance between social cohesion while allowing these minorities to thrive within their own culture? And how can we use this as an example for the world as we try to move into multipolarity?
So first of all, the minorities existing in Russia, most of them, they are original, they are organic, they are natural. So these minorities always were part of our Eurasian multi-ethnic society, and they have found 100 years ago their way to coexist, to be part of the whole, the part of the system of our state, of our society. So it is we are dealing here not with artificial and perverted, newly made sectarian minorities, but with organic minorities belonging to the same civilization. So we have no problem with their presentation. They are present in any senses. For example, if you consider the ethnic structure of Russian government, for example, you immediately will see many people with different ethnical names, many Tatars, from many Bashkirs, many Caucasian people, many people and Ukrainians in Russia, or Belarusians in Russia. We could not separate from all Russians. So there is a kind of, I would say, super ethnic structure of political rule, of political elite. We have some districts, some domains, some territories, some zones peopled with the ethnic minority group, but their representatives feel themselves at ease in their special zones and outside of them. So we have no predilection in ethnic sense, but that is totally different. So the minorities in Russia, they are organic and rooted with the identity, and we have just hierarchy of their identities. There is super ethnic identity of of state, of Russian patriotism. That is proper to Chechens, to Tatars, to anybody, to Kalmyks, to all minorities. But at the same time, we have a special region where the traditional behavior, the set of values are conserved and flourish. So you are absolutely free to pass from locality with much more clear shape of local tradition and ethnical and linguistic society to the general class of ruling class of the state. No problem with the place to live, or work. But that is the result of history of our empire and as well of Soviet Union, because in Tsarist empire the ethnic minorities were not conceived as some colonized territories. They were conceived as the population of provinces. So they had equal status with original Russians. So there were no problem, except some rare case, but generally that was very harmonious and balanced, and that has created a kind of tradition. And in Soviet Union, the communists they wanted to say that Soviet people is the new historical formation. They cultivated, the Bolsheviks, they cultivated as well national or ethnic minorities, and they have created a kind of misreading of the place of the ethnic minorities in the state, because they labeled the ethnic groups as nations that corresponded to historical version of communism. But nevertheless, we could say that in spite of all exaggerations and ambiguities of communist ethnic or national politics, in spite of that, all the ethnic groups were conserved during Soviet time. So I think that we have long tradition, Soviet and pre-Soviet, or how to deal with the minorities in the organic way. And now we are bothered by the fact that there is the huge amount of migration in Russia. So only in the time of liberal rule in Russia that started from the beginning of the 90s, we started to experience the problem with migrations, because that was not organic migrations, that were new minorities coming outside of our common cultural and civilizational space, and that has created some problems more or less the same as in the West. But the problem, the root of the problem in both cases is in the liberal concept that denies the collective identity and promote perverted version of the ideology of human rights. So human rights as ideology in the hand of liberals means the denial of the collective identity, of national belongingness, of or religious, cultural belongingness of the individuals, and to put them on the same formal scale in order to destroy any kind of collective identity. That is idea, because immigration is special, not only economic tool, but ideological weapon of liberals trying to atomize any kind of society and destroy any kind of collective identity in favor of pure individual. So we have and we had in Russia totally different attitude, and I think that Now we're coming back to traditional values and traditional ways to solve the problem with immigration, because if you want to become Russian, it is always possible, but you need to be loyal to our cultural code, to be patriots, to defend our country if needed. So if you want to become Russia, you should prove that. Otherwise the immigration will be impossible. We need to restore this organic attitude to ethnic minorities, with all respect to them, but in the context of to conserve and to reinforcing the common identity.
Thank you, Professor. For the audience, could you draw some parallels between Donbas and Palestine, if you've noticed any?
It's difficult to say that it's different situation, I think, because Ukraine was organic part of our common space. The people of Ukraine, they belong to two branches of Eastern Slav population. Great Russian and Small Russian. Great Russian, they populated Crimea, Odessa, Kharkov, eastern part of Ukraine historically, and Small Russians, they were the original population of the western part of Ukraine. I want to remind to our listeners that these great Russians, they were initially the part of the same people, but coming first to the east, to the region of Moscow, and after liberation from Mongols rule, there was a kind of restoration of the Russian fully independent states and the new currents of this time Eastern Russians or Great Russians. They returned to original territories controlled for the century by Tatars, by the way, and different Turkish and Mongolian rulers. So that was reconquering eastern part of Ukraine from Golden Horde, from Turks, from Nogais, Tartar, Crimean Tartar, that the Eastern Russians have returned to this Eastern Ukraine. So, but after that, the growing state of Eastern Russians, so-called Russian Empire, liberated step by step as well western part of Ukraine, joining two branches of the same people once more. So the Ukraine is totally artificial creations. There is no deep identity in Ukrainian people because we have two branches of the same people, and the Polish politics and Austrian politics, they would like to transform their Ukrainian populations in different people, different nations, in order to prevent the unification with the main mass of the Slavs, of the Eastern Slavs. So it was a kind of new historical policy, and that was used already after the fall of the Soviet Union by the Western globalists in order to create a problem and to provoke a civil war in between the same people, between Eastern Slavs, between Greater Russians and Small Russians, both of them belong to the same roots, to the same Eastern Slavs. So Ukraine, it is geopolitical territory of the fight between Russia as the main center, main core of East Slavic population against the Western civilization. So it is not Russians against Ukrainians. It totally false to regard this situation, and that is the zones, intermediary zone between Russia as special Eurasian state and geopolitical entity and Western civilization. So Donbas is just a part of this Eastern Ukraine, and not all Eastern Ukraine. Eastern Ukraine is much broader, and the other places in Ukraine as well belongs to the same territory. So we just reunificating now. We don't. We aren't conquering Donbas. We are unificating this civilizational space, the great Eastern Slav space, against the Western civilization that tried to cut it in the very dark moment of our history. Gaza and Israel and Palestine is totally different things, because that was the territory where mostly Arabs population, Islamic and sometimes Christian, lived before the settlers from Europe and from all other part of the world started to people it, and they promised to original Arab population not to steal their earth, their riches, their houses, and the Jews coming to Israel, they started to violate this promise and started to make violence against the original population, and that was one military operation and political operation after the other. Finally, they have defined two against all the humanity, all the resolutions of United Nations. They have put original people in the two zones, not letting them get out of it, as if in concentration camp. And they have installed in Israel itself the racial rules, racist rules based on the attitudes to Palestinians and Arabs as the people of subhuman kind. So, and now when Hamas attacked the territory of Israel, but it is not territory of Israel. In the eyes of Palestinians, in the eyes of Arabs, in the eyes of all Muslim world, is the Palestine. It is their territory. They have attacked nobody and nothing, because Israel is entity illegitimate in their eyes. So now Israel is destroying, is making genocide on the territory that not only belongs to Palestinians, because all the territory of Palestine, including territory of modern day Israel, belongs to Palestinians, and the Jews could find a way to cohabitate with them, but they prefer to behave themselves as butchers, as killers, as assassins, and instead of try to find some balance between two religious and ethnic community, they, with the support of the Western globalists, they just have constructed a racist state in the conquered lands. So I think that the two situations are very different. The only remark or only observation I could make could make about the affinity and similarity between two cases, that in both cases we are dealing with something much more important and profound and deep than just regional local conflict. We have two fronts of the fight between unipolar Western world, Western hegemony, and emerging multipolarity, because our fight in Ukraine is in favor of multipolarity, and the fight of Palestinians, it is a fight against hegemony, against the West. And I think that the situation is aggravating more and more. And now we see these strikes against Yemen, against Houthi, against Hezbollah, against Syria, against Iraq, and the response and answers from, for time being, it is just a response or answer of Shia world. So Shia is mobilized. Shia is the core resistance in the Middle East, but that is the second front of the same global fight between multipolarity and unipolarity. Logically, we would have mobilization of Islamic world as general, not only Shia, but as well Sunni. But what we see now, we could not say that there is ongoing civilizational war between Islamic civilization and Western civilization. There is a coming war between Shia civilization as a part of Islam, including Sunni Arabs of Palestine. But the main core of this resistance against hegemony is the will and identity of Shiite people, and Russia is fighting its war against the same enemy. So we have two fronts of the same war: Russian Western in Ukraine and Shia Western in Middle East, starting from Gaza, because Shia Paul has reacted radically against genocide, and other Islamic countries were much more tolerant, and it seems that they are observing the martyrdom and the death of their brothers, Muslim brothers, without any reaction. I am a little bit astonished of such passive reaction of the Islamic countries against genocide in Gaza, but I think that Shia and Shiite, they are saving the dignity of Islamic civilization, and today they and nobody else deserve the real name of hero of Islamic Paul, of Islam, because they now are real Islam. They pretended from Khomeini's time to be the avant-garde of the Islamic world, but nobody, or almost nobody, believed them. Now they prove that were much more than just words. And I think because in Shia is leading power in Iraq as well. Somehow Assad government is a typical Shia.
Thank you so much for that. I actually have a follow-up question. I wanted to reference a tweet of yours from 2022. Orthodox and Muslims are united in the battle against the Antichrist of the West. Can you elaborate on this a little so we can understand it from a political perspective? Thank you so much. Oh, no. Wait, hold on one second. We have to bring him back up.
Yeah.
Something happened. Everything okay. I don't see him in the space, DD.
I'll message him and make sure.
Yeah, I mean,
he's
this
using
is
a VPN, so he might have dropped. So one second.
gotcha. All right, so yeah, I mean, I definitely have some thoughts. There are a lot of questions, right, I want to ask about this, because what he said was very interesting about, this Shia pole that is resisting Western hegemony, etc., which is a question that we've been discussing for a while. It's a conversation we've had and a take we've been criticized for heavily in the pro-Palestinian community, unfortunately. But it's great to hear that he feels the same way. Does anyone else have any thoughts while we wait?
Yeah, I was, it just was very apparent to me that when he was discussing the, sort of greater Slav and lesser Slav communities within, the former Soviet Union lands. You look at Ukraine and Russia, and he spoke of all the different communities that live in harmony inside of Russia now. You cannot possibly not see how the West has weaponized the Western Ukrainians against the Slavic community in the East and tried to differentiate them and use that in order to subvert the rise of a great Slav state again. I think it's quite apparent that they would love to break Russia, and that if you look at all
this
around
is their official policy. Their official policy is to decolonize Russia and to stop Russian imperialism by balkanizing Russia on ethnic lines, and
yes,
they say this openly.
Yeah, and when you look at all of the actions of the West since the Second World War, you can see that they used this exact same tactic, whether overtly or covertly. I mean, we know it was covertly in Ukraine for decades. It basically never stopped since the Second World War. But when you look at other countries where we have color revolutions, the same tactics are used. It's all the exact same thing happening over and over again, and they use it because it works. And it's just unfortunate that for the people of Ukraine, who, if you look at the Kiev Independent, I've posted this numerous times over the last couple of years. The Kiev Independent had a couple of different polls that were taken. One, I believe, was in 2012, and the other one was in 2019. And it was about support for Bandera and Shukevich, and how many people were in agreement with the actions of what they did during the Second World War and before that. And it was interesting that there was only a 1% difference between the two different polls that were set like 7 years apart or so. And what was interesting about it is that less than 31% of Ukrainians were in support of Bandera and Shukevich. So what you have now inside of Ukraine is a minority of people who are in support of this fascist idealism, and they are in control over the majority who do not agree with this. And this is an example of how the West weaponizes these fascist ideas and these extremist ideas to hold power over populations that want no part of this. They basically want to live their lives, and yet you've got these extremists backed by the West in order to enact all of the geopolitical designs to seize power and control everything.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So, do you have any commentary? Or sorry, Barracks? And then we'll go to Sewell.
Just because when you brought up that this point that Dugin made about Shia leadership in the resistance against the Zionist entity, this being a problem in when we bring it up in pro-Palestinian spaces, and Dugin's point is made not just in West Asia but also here in the United States. Like with Biden's reaction punishing Dearborn, Michigan, like the highest per capita Muslim population in the United States, which I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Samira, is unique in the United States in that it's also majority Shia.
In Dearborn specifically.
In Dearborn specifically. Such that the Wall Street Journal will publish a whole article on the day that Biden visits Dearborn saying that Dearborn is the jihad capital of the United States because the Shia population specifically is denouncing him for his green lighting of the genocide in Gaza. Like, Dugin is on point. I am keeping track of all the people with their hands up. I have a list. We're just prioritizing panelists right now.
Yeah.
I think it was interesting when he said that in the neo-democracy we're basically ruled by, enforced by the minorities. Their power is enforced. And I think, it's crazy because they're doing it through victimization. And this whole system is basically holding on impressions, lies, um, stretched stats. Basically, all we're living in neo democracy is like a false narrative that just keeps us going to work, paying bills. But yeah, I really found it very interesting. Thank you.
Just to address that, don't you think that when it comes to all of these identity politics being played to sort of keep us fighting amongst ourselves rather than looking at what our governments are doing, that they're trying to enact laws that give supposed protections and rights to these people of different interest groups, special interest groups, but they don't address the fact that people are already protected by law, by our constitutions, and by our charters of rights of different countries. We already have the freedom of expression. We already have the freedom of speech. We already have the freedom to worship whatever way we need or want to worship. So all of these different problems, societal problems, so-called problems that they bring up are just manufactured to keep us in a state of anger towards each other. Would you say that's fair?
They're made, I do believe, Tyler, they're made by decrees of kings, that come to the top of the democratic system. So they rule by decree. So they change our charters. They manipulate the laws to include things that go against the charter or the Bill of Rights in the U.S., I do believe. So I think that it's really made through the mechanism of administrative, let's say, democracy. Like legislative and the executive, and we take a few notes into laws, and basically we can like eliminate certain rights in the charter or in the Bill of Rights. So, and it's done, I do believe, at state level. So, yeah, that's what I think, Tyler.
And Jimmy, you don't have your hand up anymore, but you did have your hand up for a bit if you just wanted to chime in
I
briefly.
think he correctly pointing out that Professor Dugin correctly pointing out that the world is transitioning from unipolarity to multipolarity, and he and actually I read his article, the green dragon and the ugly green dragon. He's basically saying that the beast of globalists, they are cornered. And a cornered dragon, a cornered beast is the most dangerous. And he actually is kind of fear-mongering, if it's correct to say so, appropriate to say so. He's basically saying that 2024 is a very critical year. Maybe we should just defeat the West and free the mankind, and there could be Third World War. And I'm not sure if I agree with his viewpoint on this, because we have a mechanism, so-called MAD, right? Mutual assured destruction. And in this sense, if it is a war between those P5 powers, China, Russia, United States, UK, France, that is impossible because it involves nuclear weapons and hydraulic weapons, right? And that it will spare the destruction of mankind is impossible. But in the sense that proxy wars, the Third World War already began in year 2014. The moment of Maidan, right, that it already began in Syria, in Ukraine. And so I'm going to ask him about this. And I will also ask him about his fourth political theory, in which he was creating a political theory other than liberalism, communism, and fascism. He tried, and I think he is a legitimate intellectual trying to create a new ideology transcending all the previous three. And in his mind, the previous three, liberalism, communism, and fascism, all failed. But I disagree. It doesn't fail. Communism is alive and ass-kicking right now in China. Although a lot of people do not agree with my viewpoint, and they are basically saying China is also a socialist country, which is so not true. All the lands in China are owned by the states, and the SOE, I mean state-owned enterprises, still the pillar of our economy. How would you say that we are a capitalist society? That is impossible. And also, I would also ask
Yeah,
him about.
hang on. I just want to get to some of the other speakers, but I mean, I agree that I mean, I also have I had a couple questions myself about Dugin's fourth political theory, because I did enjoy that book. Sorry to cut you off, but Joey, you had your hand
I
up a
have
bit as well.
I have
Oh,
Dugan back. I'm just trying to get him back to panel, so just sit
ah,
tight. But go ahead and talk while we get him back into the room.
Yeah, we also have a lot of requests right now, and we're working on getting panelist. So bear
You
with
know what?
us.
I haven't really got a question. I just wanted to basically say, this little break that's happened, very impromptu. I think it's a gift from God because we've been able to basically unpack what the conversation has been so far. So although it might look and sound like it's been a glitch, I kid you not, this is the best thing that could have happened today. Like I'm totally loving this. So that's literally all I wanted to say. Feel free to drop me down to the listeners, and then you can bring someone else up. I think Angelo might have some very interesting questions, so I would really want to hear anything that's coming from that side. But thank you. This has been brilliant. I love this little break that we've had.
yeah, there is a lot to unpack even after just 4 questions. I know DD has at least 2 more questions. So
Yeah, I have another one question I'm going to ask
I
him.
wrote you down, Jimmy. No worries. we gotta,
Yeah.
we gotta
Which is
gotta rotate the panel, because you had a couple of minutes to speak.
Hold on. I can't see him. He says he's here, but I can't.
Here's what you can do. You can send him another invite via DM and have him click the invite itself, and then that'll bring him up. Just make sure there's enough room on the panel.
Sarah, are you saying that Russia also has the Great Firewall preventing Professor Dugin
Yes.
from dialing in?
Yes, but I
Are you
don't think it's
serious?
called the
No, are
greater.
you
I
kidding
don't
me?
think it's
No,
called the
no, no.
Great Firewall in Russia. I think it's called the Iron Curtain. The
Oh
the
my
iron
God.
the Iron Fire Curtain.
No, Iron
Iron
Curtain
Curtain.
is a word coined by Winston Churchill, basically saying that an Iron Curtain is falling from Stettin to where? I cannot remember.
Okay, he's back in the room. Just bringing him up to panel now.
Right. I would also ask him about the orientation of the Russian
Wait,
state.
let me ask him my question
Okay.
first, and then
Of
perfect.
course.
He is
Of
back.
course.
All right, and Samira, take your question, and then I have just two more, and then I'll hand you guys over to Samira and the Barracks.
Perfect. Okay, yes, we can hear you. Thank you so much
Do you hear
for
me?
rejoining. Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. Thanks so
One,
much
two,
for
three. Do you
rejoining.
hear me? Could I speak?
Yes, we
Professor,
can hear you. Can you
Could I
hear us?
speak? Could I speak?
Professor, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. I hear you. And
Yes, go
you?
ahead.
So
Okay.
it's just me with the issue.
Very interesting. So many questions, many opinions, and interesting about the problem of how we could and should act in the year of Green Dragon. So I think that the idea is that the history is open. That is very important. There are two versions to understand what the history is. And one version is mechanical one. So there is the kind of the chain of the causes and the effects, and we could not change it. So we are in Indian tradition. There is the concept of karma. So if we are under karma, under this flow of causes and effects, we could change nothing. And in that sense, if we regard what we have now, the rule of globalists, the rebellion of the rest against the West and the peoples against elite, we could say that some negative exit is inevitable, that we are doomed to fail, to lose the battle. But if we can as well have different version of his history, understanding of history, because the history can be regarded as something organic, as a living, so spiritual. So there are no such thing as inevitable mechanical law of historical development. Everything depends on our will. So we could find what seems to be invincible. And that is the image of the hero fighting the dragon. For example, you could consider how great and big the dragon is and how small comparing to it hero is. But all our history, all our mythology, all our religion teach us that it is possible. Everything depends on the will and of the decisiveness of the hero. So the system has a weak element, and I think that modern days liberalism, globalism has its weak point. And if we are smart enough, if we are wise enough, if we are brave enough to find and to hit this weak point, we will win it. So I think that one of the weapon to overcome it, it is not to follow their divide and rule logic. For example, they say, that bad Putin is fighting against good Ukrainians, but that is totally false. It is not so. So if we consider the situation, we immediately find out that it is about defense, legitimate defense of sovereignty of Russian civilization against Western hegemony. And all this conflict was provocation of the West in order to stop the growth of Russia. The same with Middle East, the same with potential problem between China and Taiwan. So we should stop to let them divide and rule. We should propose a kind of alternative strategy, because maybe the West and liberal elites are stronger than ourselves put isolatedly. For example, the NATO is stronger than Russia alone. stronger than China alone, still on the military ways, stronger than Islamic world, than Africa and Latin America, but coming together in India, joining all our efforts in order to stop hegemony as the kinds of plague, a kind of disease, a kind of epidemic coming from the globalist West, we could together, adding our resources, our possibilities, our capacities, we could together stop expansion of globalism. So we could win. For example, we need to make a kind of alliance, and that is multipolarity. It is not about restore bipolar system that existed before the end of the Cold War. The other things we need to find our allies in the West, and I think the Western peoples and Western societies, the Western masses can be important player in this fight against globalism, because the Western population is taken by liberal maniac as a hostages. And we shouldn't hate the Western people, including fighting against the West. We should understand they are brothers and sisters who are the victims of that beast. So they are prisoners of the beast and not his aides. So we should make carefully this distinction between hostages and the terrorists. So we should fight terrorists, but we need to liberate and save the hostages. So I think that is a very important attitude. So we need to find a weak point. The other point, I think that the agenda of globalists was declared openly too early, because I think that absolute majority of the humanity, including Western humanity, is not ready to accept LGBT, transgender, post-human, transhumanist, post-humanist attitudes. So it is scandalous. It is too early to impose on them such perversions as pedophilia and many other things, legalization of incest, all that liberals claim to be progressive values. So I think that humanity is shocked now by this demonstration of perversion and moral degeneration of the Western liberal elites. So we need to use all the weak points of the Green Dragon and hit it in the weakest of the points, cooperating together. And fourth political theory you have mentioned, that is precisely invitation to get out from this three of the logic of three ideologies of liberalism, communism, fascism, because they are the products of the modern West, the totalitarian, all three of them. Concerning China, I think that China has elaborated by now a very special version of political system where some socialist elements are combined with traditional Chinese Confucianism. And this Confucianism is very clearly felt when you get in touch with the deep level of Chinese society. Chinese society is based not on the social ideas or economical ideas, but on the ethics. And this ethics transforms Chinese ethics, deep Confucianist ethic transformed deeply Maoism, socialism, communism, as well as capitalism, economy, politics, government, everything in China loses its Western meaning and obtains very original and very special Chinese meaning. So it is, I consider Chinese system a kind of forced political theory, not just orthodox communism or socialism. So it is not just a mixture between capitalism and socialism, but something completely original. So the same with Shia structure of Iran. So Shia politics is neither communist nor liberal nor nationalist. It's something different. So we need to think more on fourth political theory, not as closed and complete ideology, but rather or as of invitation to get out the narrow rules of Western modern political thought. So, for example, there is no parliament in China, and that is very, very good, because parliament, as obligatory element of liberal democracy, sometimes it is totally ineffective, and just that creates the image, the perversion, and the wrong feeling of democracy with total absence of it. So, but at the same time, Chinese model described correctly in two books that I would recommend to listeners. First of all, the book Chinese Model of Daniel Bell, a Canadian scholar living in China. Very, very good book, very clear and very correct. And a new book of Eric Lee that is called Party Life. Great book. I would highly recommend you. So we need to, first of all, interpret correctly what we have. For example, in the northwestern areas, when we are dealing with capitalism or communism, sometimes there is something totally different. So we need to we need to decolonize our minds, first of all, and to understand what is hidden behind the curtain of imitation of Western political thought. And I agree with first question about Ukraine, that West fomented this Nazi and artificial identity of Western Ukrainians. It is correct, totally correct remark, and that was geopolitical things. And why the West fighting any elements of patriotic feeling, nationalism, and so on, why the West has permitted and opposed radical nationalism, Nazism, and racism in Ukraine. There is the answer, because they needed to impose this false and artificial identity at high speed. They had no time to impose it in a smoother way. So they needed immediate effect, and that was possible only with radical version of nationalism. So modern days Kievan regime is pure Nazism, pure racism, and I think that nothing of the kind would be tolerated in the West. But that was the West who has originated this perverted ideology. So in order to violate the consciousness of normal Ukrainian people, that is all, as well as the Western population, hostages. They are not enemies. They are hostages of this clique of pro-Western, pro-liberal group that has created a kind of dictatorship in Ukraine.
Samira, can you do me a favor, and can we
Sure.
allow Haas to speak, because he has
Yes,
to go?
of course. Go ahead, Haas.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, you're fine.
Thank you. I just had and it's really an honor to speak with you, Professor Dugin. I've been following you for a long time, but I don't want to go too long. I wanted to say that you mentioned that the three ideologies of modernity,
Sorry,
which is
I don't hear anything.
Oh, Haas, I'm going to rotate you really quickly, and then
Okay.
Okay. Professor, can you hear him?
No. Unfortunately, no.
Okay, Haas, do you want to ask, and then we'll try to relay it to him, and then you can just listen to the answer?
Yeah, sure. What I was going to say is that when we understand the triad of the three ideologies of modernity, which is liberalism, fascism, and Marxism, I don't want to be too biased as a Marxist myself, but I do think it's worth observing the fact that it seems to me that in contrast to liberalism and in contrast to fascism, the Marxism seems to be this gateway and this opening for the assimilation of modernity, or the integration of specifically technological modernity, but also elements of the sociological modernity, standardization, and so on and so on, in terms of modernization of the economy. It seems like Marxism is kind of an open door when it comes to what kind of political, social, cultural, etc. system that corresponds to. To briefly give an example of what I'm talking about, we obviously have the Marxism that's been cynicized when applied to the Chinese context. But it's also been true that Marxism has adapted to other contexts as well. For example, this is in North Korea, right, with the Juche system and the specific adaptation and interpretation of Marxism there. Obviously, in the case of Stalin's reign within the Soviet Union, we have an application of an integration of Marxism, I think, in the Russian context as well. So, in contrast, liberalism and fascism don't appear to be able to have this adaptivity. And one can make the argument that this is the case in Germany or Italy, but I don't see a case of the adaptation of an ideology organically to national context, but rather the employment of similar methods of dictatorship. So basically, I would say, what do you think is perhaps unique about Marxism in its ability to allow for different civilizations to integrate Western modernity without fully compromising their values and their unique character? But that's pretty much it. But I think he's disconnected. Or
I'll get your question to him, Haz, and I'll get the answer since this is recorded. So I'll send it over to him after, if that's cool.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I know you have to go.
Sure, yeah. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming, Haz.
And while we're trying to get Professor Dugin back up, we've also... Do you want me to go through the list of other people who wanted to...
Yeah, I need to get Alex in for Serbia and Tyler, and then after that, it's good to go. And Samira's coming back, I guess. She had some audio issues. You guys are free to discuss whatever. I'll just work in the back end to get the two of them back.
Yeah, Alex, you're in the panel. You can give your thoughts.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be on the panel. I think this is fascinating and exciting to have Professor Dugin on an X Space. It just shows you how the platform has completely evolved from what it has been in the past. I don't think we would ever have the opportunity to hear from Professor Dugin in this way and ask him directly questions like this without having the narrative, the mainstream narrative that demonizes Professor Dugin, and that's kind of one the questions I wanted to ask him about, essentially regarding Serbia, and getting his perspective, because I think a lot of the things that apply for Serbia and the Balkans as a battleground itself can apply to a lot of the other
Well,
areas.
I think you're gonna get to ask. He's back, so I'll give it over to you to ask about Serbia, because I'm definitely interested in the answer. And then I just have two more questions. I think he's back. 1 second. Okay, we have him back.
Okay. Can I speak?
Yes, go ahead, Professor.
Okay, so I have listened to the question of Haz, and that is very interesting. I think that first of all, if Marxism is in real opposition to liberalism, and if a left ideology is concerned much more by the real war of against capitalism than different minorities, as is the case in many situations now. So I am very I'm very glad that there is still some left Marxist or not tendencies that seriously understand the necessity to fight the liberalism and capitalism, because the majority of the leftist movement now are rather they became the kind of tool of big capital serving Soros and its colored revolution, using images of Che Guevara, but in the reality, they fight on the side of the killers and the enemies of Che Guevara. So, if there is communism that still continue to fight capital, the capitalism, it is very, very good. And as long as I know, the tendency that is represented by Haas belongs to this rare in our days tendencies. So I agree with the ethical aspect of the Marxism and against capitalism, but we need to understand a kind of limitations of Marxist thoughts for first of all the theory of progress that is common to liberalism and Marxism, the materialism, atheism, idea that only the Western civilization is an example of development and progress, and the denial of the multiplicity of the civilizations. There are so many ideological elements in Marxism that prevent these elements to consider Marxism as reliable version of real anti-capitalist struggle. But nevertheless, I agree with the idea that Sinization of the Marxism in China, or some Russification of the Marxism with Bolshevik and above all with Stalin and Juche theory of Northern Korea. These examples, or for example, the Marxism in Latin America, they are examples of the positive adaptation of the Marxism to the different societies. But we need to observe very important elements. According to the classical Marxism, the socialist revolutions are possible only in the capitalist, fully developed, industrialized society with big city urban proletariat and the established bourgeoisie. And in the reality, the victories of the Marxist parties were just opposite to Marxist ideas, because all successful revolutions of socialist type were produced, have succeeded in non-industrialized agrarian countries without enough of urban proletariat and very undeveloped and local bourgeois system. So the best criticism and denial of the validity of Marxism as theory were the real socialist revolution, basing on Marxism, but radically contradicting Marxism itself. So we need to maybe revise how much these revolutions were indebted to Marxism, or they were, or the Marxism was just the covert, the kind of the facade, the kind of surface of the deeper struggle for justice and fairness of and the progress in the spiritual way of traditional society. Maybe Mao's revolution was the fight for the new renewed heavenly mandate, as in the ancient Chinese history. Maybe ethnic and religious disagreement with capitalism was the main driver of Marxism in Latin America. And Juche, North Korean doctrine, is the kind of religious cult, messianic eschatological Korean religious cult that has find new words, new concepts in socialism, but in essence, it's something different, as well as in Russia. Russian national Bolshevism was something quite different from the classical Marxism. So, but nevertheless, I think that has touched important things. And if we deal with real and sincere anti-capitalist, anti-liberal, anti-globalist ideology, so left or right, so we need to explore its potential possibilities to be transformed for forced political theory. And I think the same with fascism, because I think that fascism could be transformed in different contexts. The wrong racist version of fascism in Germany was a kind of betrayal of some spiritual elements developed by Heidegger, defended by Junger. But the fascism we know, it is based on the totally wrong supposition. It is anti-human, it is racist, it is criminal. So that was the big perversion in the fascism, basing on the pretended superiority of Western civilization, Western race, and that is common to liberalism. So I think that the liberal racism and biological racism of National Socialists is more or less the same thing, and that the origins of it were not in the Germany but in the England, because that racism was developed and social Darwinism was developed in the Anglo-Saxon liberal racist culture. So, but it is very, very difficult and absolutely not needed idea to rehabilitate a far-right ideology or far-left. We need to go beyond the limits of classical political theories, exploring they in the depth, but because they were incapable to stop liberalism, they have failed. So, and because they belong to the same totalitarian Western political culture, modern Western political culture, I think it is easier and much more useful to start from outside of this context, because we could be, when we will be trapped, we can be trapped inside of political modernity, speaking about what was better, communism, liberalism, or fascism, but what versions of it is acceptable and or not. My idea is to reject them in block, everything, every three political theories. Maybe they had historically some valid elements, but in general, these positive elements were embedded and much in incurable failures, atheistic, materialistic, mechanistic, basing on the modern science, and all that we need to overcome in order to decolonize our political thought.
Well, thank you, Professor. I'm going to save my last two questions for the end, since there's so many hands. So I'll turn it over to Samira and then Alex.
Thank you so much. My question is regarding a tweet that you posted in 2022, which I found very interesting and very relevant to today's situation, especially what you discussed about the Shia pole resisting Western hegemony. So it reads, Orthodox and Muslims are united in the battle against the Antichrist of the West. I'd like to hear more about that, especially from a geopolitical perspective. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, great. I mean by that different things. First of all, there is a kind of war between multipolarity and unipolarity. The Western hegemony represents clearly unipolarity, and Biden's administration wants to save it, to prolong it, to secure it, to still keep it, this unipolarity. And that is explanation of the war between Russia and the West.
It looks like we lost audio from Professor Dugin again.
Oh,
I'm
no.
getting some reactions. I'm thinking we lost his audio.
I think that we need to clear some of the requests. Maybe that'll reset things and that'll make things easier. If that's okay, we're gonna start bringing everyone back up once at the Q&A session. No.
Yeah, as long as we keep Alex up. Alex was a special guest. Keep him on the panel. No offense, Jimmy, but Dugin did answer two of your questions.
Soul has to go to church. A good
No,
Orthodox boy.
are you saying that Dugan already answered my question?
He
And
definitely did.
I'm not sure whether when he dropped out, I raised my question whether he was listening in.
But we'll make sure you get to talk to him if he comes back, Jimmy. Don't worry.
Oh my goodness, this is oh yes, he's back.
Welcome back, Professor.
Welcome back. Sorry for the tech issues.
Yes, go ahead, Professor.
Sorry, I would like to finish my response. I have spoken about how Shia pole and Russian Orthodox pole could be united in the fight against unipolarity. On the geopolitical level, it is evident. Islamic world and Russia, we are fighting against unipolar hegemony in favor of multipolarity, but as well there is spiritual, religious, eschatological dimension of this fight, because in the eyes of Orthodox people, Orthodox civilization, the West, modern, liberal, ultra-liberal West, capitalist, globalist West, represent Antichrist, the figure that as a kind of enemy of the Christ, enemy of the church, enemy of the humanity in the situation of the end time. And the same or almost the same vision is proper to Shia tradition. In Shia religion, they say about Dajjal, the liar. He will appear at the end of the time, and he will represent the worst aspects of the human culture, and the duty of the real Shia Muslim or a real Muslim generally is to fight Dajjal. So we are united not only on the level of geopolitics, but as well on the level of the eschatology, at the level of the religion, because we identify both Russian Christian Orthodox and Islamic Shia, we identify in the modern West, in the globalists, the same negative figure, the figure of the Antichrist or Dajjal. So we are united not only on the geopolitical level, but as well on the deeper religious level.
Thank you so much. That was very informative, and I believe that Sunni Chechens also believe in this particular view, and this is completely in line with Islamic eschatology.
Go ahead, Alex.
So I have finished my answer.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you again for the opportunity to ask Professor Dugin some questions here. Professor, it's an honor to have the opportunity to speak with you, especially after reading a lot of your work.
Wait,
and listening to
he dropped again. He dropped again.
Oh, I don't think he was able to hear me either. That's okay.
We're dealing with a Russian VPN, so it's pretty. It's terrible for Twitter. It's really bad for Twitter Spaces.
Russian VPN.
Very bad for Twitter. Very bad for Twitter Spaces.
Chinese VPNs seem to be
China's VPN is better for Twitter, right?
I knew he was going to say that.
Go ahead. Okay, Professor, thank you for coming back. Go ahead, Alex, Jimmy, and then after Alex, Sewell, so we can go to church.
Thank you so much. As I was saying, Professor, it's an honor to speak with you. Unfortunately, I think you've been unfairly demonized in the West. I think that's putting it lightly. And speaking as an American, I believe it's important that Americans actually take the time to understand your unique Eurasian perspective directly from you, because you provide important insights for Americans, not only about the Russian ethos, but also about, obviously, the multipolar world that is currently evolving and its implications and how we should move forward after the era of modernity. I say that because I think with a better understanding of your views, I firmly believe that Russians and average Americans can come together to fight against the warmongering, anti-human globalists as the natural allies that they are, and I think they should be. However, the questions I have for you are related to the Balkans. As you might notice by my name, I'm of Serbian ethnicity, although I'm American. And so specifically regarding the Serbs, who were unquestionably used as a test case for the strategy of balkanization and nation building that was refined and now being employed against Russia. I especially think it's important to get a better understanding of the Balkans specifically because it remains a critical battleground between the globalists and those who respect national sovereignty and see multipolarity as a system of global checks and balances. So if I may, I'd like to first ask just a broad question about Serbia and then a more specific question about Serbia's southern province of Kosovo and Metohija and Republika Srpska and Bosnia and Herzegovina. First, given the rise of the new multipolar world order, what do you see as the main challenges and opportunities for Serbia and the Serbian people in balancing their relationships with both the West and Russia and the global South? And how can Serbs navigate the current complex geopolitical dynamics to protect their national interests, particularly considering their geographic location?
Professor? Professor, you have to unmute your mic if you're there.
On my end, it looks like he's still connecting.
Oh, I can see him as a speaker.
Same.
Yeah, it's showing up as muted for me as well.
I guess Chinese VPNs are definitely better than Russian VPNs. What about Iranian
Jimmy,
VPNs?
get us that connection with the Chinese VPNs. We'll.
What about
Okay,
Iranian
so
VPNs?
could you let me speak? And Professor Dugin, can you hear me?
No.
He's still connecting.
I'm dying.
You can talk if you want, but I mean, it's a 50-50. Probably less than that.
50-50.
Sewell,
And
if
so
he's not
maybe
able to
he's not able
answer,
to
hold on one second. Sewell, if he's not able to answer your question, do you want to send it to us and we can ask if you have to go to church or?
go to
Yeah, yeah.
church.
I mean,
Yes.
I can still wait
My question is
like 10, 15 minutes.
Jimmy,
So
just
we'll see.
wait. By the way, Jimmy, can you co-host when I host Carl on Thursday? Would you do that? Jimmy?
Oh
You
yes, I will. Of course, I will be your co-host on December the 8th. Actually, when yesterday when you asked me to do the speech,
All right. Professor Dugin has come back. So
so
welcome.
good. So maybe he can.
Hold on.
Jimmy,
It's
Jimmy,
going to
be
be
quiet.
Sewell.
Yeah, Jimmy, be quiet, and then we'll get to Alex's question about. I want to talk about the Balkans, please, please, please. Professor, did you hear the question about Serbia?
Yes, yes. Do you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, okay. About ideas of Eurasianism that Alex has asked me. So I have published many things on internet and Force Political Theory site, the site of 4pt.su. So you can find in any languages, 45 languages. There is the censorship, censorship in the United States that doesn't let my text to be read by the Americans and globalists. They prevent American people from knowledge of my ideas. They make the radically caricatured vision image of my ideas, and it can be overcome only if enough people in the United States would like to know more about my ideas and about Eurasianism, about force political theory, about the criticism of hegemony, and about multipolarity. So I think that if we have you wish to know that will happen. So in internet there are many forms to find anything, and I have put in internet everything that I have written in many languages, not only in English. But concerning Serbia, I think that now I agree that Serbia was a kind of example, the test of globalist expansion and destruction of alternative Eastern camp, and that is by the destiny of the Serbia was so tragic, because it paid the high price of independence and unity, integrity, because of its identity, not so much because of its strategical position in the Balkans, but as well because of its deep identity, the loyalty to Orthodox tradition. So, and that is why I adore Serbians. And but I think that that we could revise the situation in Serbia only after Russia coming back, after our victory, inevitable victory, but inevitable but difficult victory in Ukraine. After that, we could return to the Balkans questions. Now we are not in the position to really change the balance of power in Kosovo, but we will return for sure when we will be great again, and or maybe when in the West the revolt against this globalist elite starts, because I see in the future, in the near future, many black swans, because these black swans are not just irrational factors of the history, but they the kind of necessity to improve for the tragical situation where the West is. So thank you very much for our conversation. Sorry for these problems with the sound, because sometimes I didn't hear well the questions. In other cases, I did hear well, and sometimes there was the problem with the mic. So thank you very much for inviting me, and best wishes for all of you. We will win for sure.
Oh, thank you so much, Professor. If you have time for one more question, Sul, go ahead.
I'm here.
Oh,
Okay.
great. Hello. Are you able to hear me, Mr. Dugin?
Professor, can you hear Sul?
No.
All right, Sul,
Unfortunately, no. I hear your voice, but I don't hear a question now.
I can also ask. Try again, Sul.
All right. Hello, Professor. Are you able to hear me?
Okay, he's not, so I'll ask the question. 1 second. Professor, previously you've stated support for Azerbaijan's territorial integrity over the question of Nagorno-Karabakh due to Armenia's pivot towards the West. Yet it seems that Azerbaijan's conquests have mostly aided the interests of the West and NATO. How are Russia, Iran, and China prepared to deal with Britain's middle corridor into Central Asia? And what threat does this type of pan-Turkism serve to Eurasianism?
First of all, I don't think that Azerbaijan can be considered to be direct support of the Western powers. Armenia is much more with Pashinyan involved in the Western politics, but that was everything that has happened in Armenia and Azerbaijan last time. That was tragedy, because Russia wanted to keep the good relations with both friendly peoples. Obviously, the Karabakh was occupied by Armenians after radical ethnic cleansing of Turkish population of Karabakh. That was unjustful, and some reparation and reversal of this situation was really needed. But Pashinyan, that is really failure for Armenia, because he is the puppet of Soros, and he has betrayed Armenians. He has betrayed Karabakh. He is the real criminal figure in the Armenian history, because he should to harmonize the situation in Karabakh between Moscow, Yerevan, and Baku, and that was possible. And we worked on the very rational plan, and everything that was destroyed by the masters of Pashinyan in the West. So Pashinyan was used against the interest of Armenians by the same powers that has created Ukrainian Nazism. So that was Soros and the globalists. So they have used Pashinyan in order to weaken Russian presence in the Caucasus, and that was tragedy for everybody in that situation. But we could not say that the victory of the Azerbaijan is the same as the victory of the West. Not at all. Turkey, as such, is not being member of NATO, is not a direct puppet of the West. It is very independent, I would say, regional power. And obviously that Russia and Iran and China should not be very happy with the situation in Nagorno-Karabakh. We have lost a bit credibility in the solutions of some regional problems, but the blame is totally on the Pashinyan. Pashinyan has destroyed all multipolar strategy in the Caucasus and the Southern Caucasus, and I think he is to blame for what we have. But I think that we should not demonize Azerbaijan, neither Turkey, and pan-Turkist project is very, very bad. It was created by CIA in order to provoke the hostility between Turkey and Soviet Union in the past. But now in the Turkey, almost nobody believes really in pan-Turkism. One thing is cultural unity of Turkish people. It's very good. Every people has all the rights to promote its ethnical identity. But the totally other thing is the use of the concept of pan-Turkism in a geopolitical sense. So, but I think that maybe you don't remark how disastrous the politics of Pashinyan was, because he has signed the agreement to cede, to give away Karabakh. At the same time, he blamed Russia for that, and all that we could explain only by the fact that he was put to power by Soros, and he is supported by Soros. So he is the worst representative of Armenian politics. But we need to deal with what we have. We are not in the power to control totally Armenia. We consider Armenia our friend and not our vassal, not the puppet. So, but if it is us who control Armenia, there will be Soros who will control it. We need to understand the situation. The sovereignty between unipolarity and multipolarity at the end of the day is impossible. So sovereignty, we should try to establish our sovereignty either on the side of multipolarity, and that is one line, or on the side of unipolarity, that is another line, alternative. So Georgia, for example, of Saakashvili, and Armenia of Pashinyan, and Ukraine of Poroshenko and Zelensky, they wanted to establish their sovereignty on the Western unipolar hegemony, and they have failed. All of them, they have lost their integrity. And those who choose multipolarity, on the other hand, they receive the support of the emerging future political system. So and global world order. So whose option is ending world order? They are losers. Those who are in tune with ongoing and emerging and growing new world order, multipolar world order, they have the chances to conserve their integrity and to reinforce their sovereignty.
Thank you, Professor. I'm going to let Warren speak because he has a question also about Armenia. So Warren, if you're there, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. Hello, Alexander. It's lovely to meet you. I have a question because I'm an investigative journalist, and we found that French military was crawling around in Ukraine since 2020, and we actually have the paperwork that shows that. And now the very person who was crawling around in Ukraine in 2020 has now just been made the French military defense attaché for Armenia after living in Kiev, only 200 yards away from the Armenian embassy. This is not a coincidence, is it?
No, I don't think that is coincidence. I think that now that France is playing the part on the side of the globalists, and I think that that means that it is not about France and French interests. That is about globalists' interests, and Macron is just one of the puppet of globalists.
I think we've lost him again.
Just think that, you know, there will one day be a future where we won't have to have Alexander Dugin use a VPN because America and Russia and China will all be working together.
Okay, I've got him back. We'll just let him have the floor to answer the question.
The floor is yours, Professor, when you're ready to speak. Can you hear us?
Professor, are you there?
Do you hear me?
Yes, great. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry, but I did miss the last questions. So I just wanted to say about some words about France. That modern days France doesn't serve the really French interest because Macron is just a puppet of the globalist. So and unfortunately, now I need to go and. Thank you very much for your attention, for your very interesting question, and I will be glad to be with all of you in other occasions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor.